All right, just so we can get started, I will go ahead and pass the reins over to Dr. Ahmed Deif, Associate Professor of Industrial Technology at Cal Poly. Thank you for being here with us today.
My pleasure. So, good afternoon, everybody. I think I met all of you online, some first time, but my name is Ahmed Deif. I'm an Associate Professor of Operations Supply Chain Management at Cal Poly. My background is in manufacturing systems. My bachelor, master's, PhD, all in manufacturing systems. My practical experience extends to mainly automotive. I worked for Chrysler R&D up in Detroit area, mainly on the Canadian side. And I also worked with some assembly companies. And since I bounced back to academia, I've been consulting with a lot of startups like you guys and also other companies. A lot of training for Lean and Six Sigma, which is part of what we're going to be discussing today. And also a lot of kind of one-to-one coaching with those companies who are off the death valley, if I would use the entrepreneurial description, and they are trying to really scale up their vivid and alive, basically, product or service they are doing. Yes, I need to use that. So, this, oops, sorry, okay, so quick disclaimer before we start. This is definitely a very, very spread thin kind of lecture today or workshop. I'm trying to squeeze a full course that we usually give at Cal Poly in 3 hours. And the main idea is really to build that process improvement mindset. Maybe you guys are going to walk away with some concepts and principles, and at least an idea about what kind of tools you can read more about. I will try to build that mindset in the first 3 points here. So what's process improvement and the concept of waste versus value. The lean thinking kind of mentality, and then after the break I will try to get you guys acquainted with some of the very popular lean tools. I'm not expecting that you will be experts in these lean tools, but the very common thing about lean tools is that they are very easy to pick up. You can easily read about them, you can easily train yourself about them. So at least I will introduce these tools to you. I also like to speak a little bit about lean culture. It's not just about the tools, but it's about the mindset and the environment and the behavior at your company or your startup. And if we have time, maybe I will touch quickly about the concept of Six Sigma. Because usually in the market now, you find people speak about Lean and Six Sigma. I belong to the school that differentiate between them, although they basically complement one another and they definitely work hand in hand, but they are two different things. But as a consultant, what really sells to customers is to put them together, Lean and Six Sigma. But we'll see what will happen with the time. So this is how I usually start with my basically students. This is not a banana to eat, although I'm going to be eating it after the workshop, but this is to start us off. So how much do we buy this banana, for example, of Trader Joe's or Walmart? One banana, how much?
30 cents.
30 cents? Yeah, after the inflation. So I usually go with the 20 cents. So let's, 30 cents, 20 cents. How much is the percentage of the weight of the peel of this banana? If we weigh it now, and then we take the peel off, what's the difference? 30%? Yeah, 40%. So if you pay 20 cents for this banana, how many cents do you pay for the peel that you're going to be throwing in the garbage? Yeah, 8 cents out of that, right? Up to 20 cents. So are you as a customer willing to do that? And usually, well, yeah, it can protect the fruit itself, but would it be great that you just pay for the fruit itself without the peel, right? If you actually pay per pound, then why should I pay for something that I will not be using, right? And this is an analogy to get us closer to the concept of waste and value. And basically, the process improvement mentality is trying to reduce that peel as much as we can, reduce that waste as much as we can. With that mentality of what the customer is really willing to pay for is what we're going to be catering for, and anything else we will consider it waste. Whether we're going to eliminate it or not, this is a different discussion. But at least from the get-go, we basically try to identify that there are things that are value added and there are things that are actually wasteful from that very clear customer perspective. And this is a very high standard if we look into process assessment and evaluation. If you're going to basically look to that perspective of what the customer is really willing to pay for or not, this is a very high standard in process analysis and process management. So the banana, right? The other analogy is the basketball coach. Any Warriors fan? No? At all? Okay. Well, I am a Warrior fan, but anyway. So this will get us to the iceberg model. Remember the basketball coach. So another very important mindset that we introduced the notion of process management and process improvement through is the iceberg model. So what's the main characteristic on iceberg? You always see a little bit of that, right? You only see the top. And basically what happens in the typical classical traditional process management is that managers actually always look to the results, right? And manage based on the results. We have all these nice KPIs, we have all these beautiful dashboards, cost, quality, time, flexibility, sustainability, put whatever, inventory turnover. All these are great, definitely KPIs to keep an eye on. But the problem, if you are managing based on a KPI, you are already on the reactive mode, right? Things happened already. So inventory is already accumulating in your warehouse, or you have already missed on your quality, basically cut off level, or you are already exceeding the lead time of whatever you would like to have. So you are already on the reactive mode. If you take this analogy to the basketball, it's like a coach who is really trying to coach his or her team based on a very important KPIs. How many points per player, basically, or how many rebounds did this player do, the steals, the assists. And that coach keeps yelling, come on, jump higher, come on, basically get more steals or have more accurate shots. It's important to keep an eye on that, but already things happened on the code itself, right? So we are late in the game. A better way to manage the process is to understand that these results are actually coming or an output of a pattern that's being exhibited in the system. And this is what we call the voice of the process. So every process will have a pattern. Every process will try to speak to you. They will try to give you some kind of insights. I'm actually going out of control. I'm actually being suffering of wear and tear. So these patterns are the patterns basically that lead to these results. And if we manage to understand the patterns of the process, we manage to listen very carefully to the process voice, we can actually design and generate patterns that will lead to the results that we are looking for. And this is why we will be more on the proactive side of things, right? Rather than just waiting for things to happen. Back to the basketball analogy, it's basically like that. Same coach, instead of yelling, score more points, have more rebounds, get more steals, actually looking into what the average speed of every player, the jumping, for example, distance of every player, and try to coach them, train them so that they can run faster, they can jump higher. And if we manage to improve these things, these patterns for every player, we can actually get a better result. So we are more on the proactive, basically, level. This is a better way of managing processes, definitely, but there's even a better one. And this is where we basically look into the system perspective. Right? This is where you understand and realize that actually you can generate system designs and system configuration. You can put together your own supply chain ecosystem. You can put together your own startup methods and processes and best practices that will generate patterns that will lead to the results that you are actually looking for. You are digging deep into the anatomy of what you are doing, right? So instead of just really looking forward for some good patterns and trying to cater for it, you actually ask yourself what will lead to these patterns that will generate these results. Back to our basketball coach analogy. Again, it's like that coach realizing and understanding that in order to jump higher and run faster, you need actually to dig all the way down to looking after the health of your players, looking after their hygiene, looking after their diet, all these kind of things that will give you healthy, resilient players that will have better patterns and generate better results. So basically, another thing I'd like you guys to understand, walk away with, is that process improvement is about that system perspective. Okay, so there are some animation missing here. But we are trying to bridge the gap between the results and the systems. And when we speak about systems, we don't speak about just fuzzy general words. We are looking into specific things. By system, we mean what kind of activities basically each company of your company is doing, what kind of connections between these activities. So I source these components and parts and I pass them on to this manufacturer. I do some logistics, third-party logistics services here. How are you connecting these activities together, and what kind of information is flowing between these activities within these connections. If you manage to have as much as possible value-added activities with seamless connections and a continuous flow, this is a very lean, very streamlined system or process that will have healthy patterns generating the results that we're trying to actually have. So this is the iceberg model. So remember two things: the banana, cater only for the fruit, the peel as much as possible, and remember, don't be a traditional manager looking just for the results, because everybody is happy with all these kinds of dashboards and business intelligence and things that can measure time, things can measure quality, and these are very important things, but they happen after the fact, right? We would like to dig deeper into the system anatomy all the way down to understand what every activity is doing, put it in control, have it in a predictable manner, make it very lean, make it added value. We'd like to connect all these activities together in a seamless way, without any kind of weight, without any kind of queuing, so that things can flow continuously from upstream to downstream, and you are lean in that manner. This is just a quick intro. Questions, comments, how do you guys feel about that? Cool. Let's keep going. Okay. I usually speak fast, and we have a lot of things to cover. So if you feel that I'm really going fast, just tell me, hey, slow down, no problem. Yes.
One quick thing, like, so you might cover this later on in the presentation, but when you're switching, say, for example, you get put into a managing position in a new job, how do you find is the most effective way to familiarize yourself with the systems and processes, being that you haven't actually gone through those yourself?
Excellent. So the quick answer, and I'm going to touch on that, is by good process mapping.
Okay.
And I'm going to speak about some of these, what lean skill or tool set will suggest as a mapping. This is what we call the value stream mapping, but this is not the only mapping up. But generally, process management starts with a good mapping of these processes and looking into the map with a specific lens. And again, we're going to speak about that first. Okay, so let's build on that now and speak a little bit about the value. So when you look into what value really means, this is kind of the dictionary definition. It's the relative worth or merit or importance of things, but this is not what we are looking for. We're looking for that. We're looking into the value from a value-added work perspective. So anything that changes the form or the fit or the function of a product or a service is something that we consider adding value. This is something that we would like, the customer is willing to pay for, and we would like really to enhance, empower, streamline as much as we can. An action that the customer is willing to pay for is what we call a value add. It's a very important fundamental perspective of process improvement. It's all about that, right? Being value oriented. And again, coming from the manufacturing background, right? And I worked for Chrysler for some time, and I can definitely attest to that. If we really put this very high standard value perspective of what the customer is really willing to pay for, we'll find that 90% or more of what we are doing in many of our manufacturing activities, at least, is actually waste. And we're going to speak about this more and more, what do we mean by waste. But very minimal is what the customer is really willing to pay for. Because the customer is willing to pay, for example, for cutting a plastic sheet or an aluminum sheet, forming it into this, for example, mug shape. Molding or injecting the lid and putting and assembling this with the body of that mug. I'm willing to pay for that, but I'm not willing to pay for a rework that's happening because you have a wear and tear on your cutting tool, for example, or because somebody is actually taking an extra 5-6 steps and moving to this location. Why should I pay for that? When you aggregate all these things together, you'll find that really the net time of generating a service or producing a product is almost in the manufacturing 5 to 10%. In the service industry, it's usually something between 20 and 30%. And everything else is categorized under that waste category. And again, with a very clear caveat here, all these wastes can't really be eliminated 100%. We have to live with some of them, but there is a big chunk of it that can be removed and reduced. So let's speak a little bit about this categorization of waste in terms of what to do as process managers here. There are, as I said, some value-added activities, non-value-added activities, right? And there are some necessary and unnecessary, basically, categorization of what you're doing. The best quadrant you need to be in, if you'd like to see whether you are really getting the worth of the money that you're paying for anybody or any process, is to be in this, basically, quadrant. You are doing necessary activities and they are all adding value. And the quadrant that you would like definitely not to be in as much as possible and eliminate totally if you're doing unnecessary activities and they're actually not adding any value. I'll give examples about that. This is basically where things get tricky a little bit, where they are not adding any value from the customer perspective, but I have to do it. Like transportation, for example. Right? Like, for example, transporting raw material from point A to point B. As a customer, why should I pay for that? Right? This is your problem to secure the raw material. But as a producer or as a manufacturer or a service provider, you have to do that. So this is kind of a non-value-added activity, but it has to be done. When you categorize it as a non-value-added activity, you will try to optimize it. Right? Instead of taking 3 weeks to basically convey or to get these materials from here to there, you'll try to squeeze this down to maybe 1 week or 10 days or whatever. Right? This quadrant is basically a quadrant that's I can't give an example because it's really hypothetical. That something that's adding value, but it's really unnecessary. So this basically we use this classification to keep an eye on these 2 things. This we call this type 1 waste. Try to eliminate as much as you can. This is type 2 waste. Try to as much as possible reduce it, manage it, squeeze it as much as you can, but you can't eliminate it. So maybe this would be a good time to pass on to you guys and get to know what you guys are doing and give an example of a waste type 1 or type 2 for what you are doing. Name, company, and try to give me an example.
My name is Jacob Wright. I am with the Tama veterinary franchise, and some of our necessary but non-value-added process steps are getting vans from out of state that we purchased to here.
Okay, excellent. Yes, sir.
My name is Ron Merrick. I'm actually retired now, but I've been the president of several companies in the world. I can only speak from history of the things I've done with this type of deal. But when I was in Chicago, for example, we had a 1-year backlog on the things we were missing. And what we did is we did Kaizen. It's a Japanese technique. We're all trained in it. And basically what we found is that we were losing a whole lot of time with 30 guys in a workshop. And they were all waiting for one computer. Or they had to go to another building to get these little 15-cent parts. It's silly stuff that you think would be common sense. But you're right. It was unbelievable. Anyway, long story short, we got that backlog down to 3 days. And with half the people, and we were able to promote everybody up. Excellent. So this stuff works.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for refreshing.
Well, I'm actually going to use you for some examples next time. Go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Dylan Fazio. I'm with GripSafe here working on a lockbox for an AR-15.
Okay.
And one of the things that we find coming up quite often is like a lot of filling out forms and you know, trying to make them look very appealing versus being able to spend that time developing products.
Gonna come to that about this over processing. Absolutely.
Yeah, and so
absolutely.
that's something that definitely we try to improve.
Good example. Yes, my friend.
Yeah, my name is Evan. My company is Adaptive Mobility. We're building, we're basically adapting electric payment cycles to make it work for people with disabilities. So right now, I'd say a big waste we have is we're shipping or planning on shipping rigs directly from the producer or manufacturer to us, and then we're modifying them and shipping them a second time to the final the customer. I think that could be streamlined and we can ship direct, and then also.
Absolutely. So again, part of those processing, if you can do it in 2 steps, or you do it in 3 steps. Absolutely.
Hi, I'm Mariana. I'm here with Cheekies,
Yeah.
and we're making leak-proof menstrual sleep shorts. And for us, one of our biggest waste that we have to deal with is transportation waste, just because when we're ordering our different fabrics, since some of them come from overseas, there's that added time. And for us, since we need to go through that streamlined process for prototyping, we need to get those lead times a little bit shorter.
Very good example. At least the name. We know the company. Your name.
Oh, sorry.
For everyone. I know your name. Okay. Online, would like to share anything?
Nothing yet.
Nothing yet. So let's keep going. But stay engaged. Okay. So things about the waste. Again, a couple of things before we move on to the different types of waste. Let's understand also that this concept of waste is kind of a flexible, dynamic concept in a sense. What you are doing now can be considered as a value for a specific segment or specific period of time, and then this basically the same product can be wasteful for other customers or in other circumstances. I always give this example of the coffee. If you're rushing into your 8 a.m. class, for example, or a meeting at 7:30, and you're passing by Starbucks, you definitely don't want to lose maybe 3-5 seconds or 30 seconds for somebody drawing this nice basically leaf or flower using the cream. But if you're chatting with your friend afternoon on a cafe, it's definitely worth the wait, right? So it's the same cup of coffee. In one setup, you would like, it's very wasteful to add this extra layer of leisure or decoration, and it's another, it's added value that actually add to the ambiance, as they say, for the setup when you have the time and you'd like really to chat with your friends. So value can be relative from one customer to another, from one setup to another, from one segment in the market to another. It's very important. And this is usually come to mind when you look into your different product lineup. Some products, some customers are really looking into the bare bone of everything and the least cost, and others are willing to pay more for basically extra feature or extra thing. So that extra thing for some customers are waste and others are actually value add. Another thing is that things change over time, right? So make sure that you're always updating and upgrading what you are offering your customers. The last thing, but it's very important, is to listen carefully to the voice of the process. Because in many cases, when you run some or you aggregate a lot of the mega processes together, you will categorize them as maybe value-add activity in general, but when you dig deep, you'll find it actually full of non-value activities. And it's your call, right? Depending on the iceberg model that we just discussed, how granular you'd like to dig deep, right? So, for example, having a coffee, for example, is value added for you, maybe yes, but when you dig deep, you'll find even in that very simple process, a lot of non-value added activities, walking around, waiting for something to boil or whatever, and you can dig deep and take this out. So keep this in mind. Keep this in mind when you do your process analysis and your waste analysis, what level of aggregation and granularity you'd like to go deep down. Usually when we speak about waste and value, this is some quotes from Toyota and Mr. Uno. I will be referring to him a lot, and Mr. Chingo. These are two very known names in the world of lean. Mr. Uno was the first manager for Toyota, and the Toyota culture system is basically the foundation of the current lean thinking that we're speaking about. He has this quote that battling waste is actually following the tortoise strategy: slowly, steady, win the race. You know, the tortoise and the rabbit, basically slow but steady and sure. And we're going to actually refer to a lot of his quotes later on. Now let's speak quickly about the types of waste and how we get you guys to be waste busters. The very famous type of waste, and I'm giving you this because I always teach my students, please put the waste glasses on and look to the process, right? This is how you analyze the process. So you map it, as I told you before, and then you start to analyze it based on this kind of perspective. The first perspective and the first thing that you look for, this is a very popular one, is the waste of defects, right? And defects here is not just going out of specs, we're going to speak very hardcore manufacturing, but actually missing the right target from the first get-go. Right? This is what we call the goalpost versus the direct, basically, yield or good production for the first time. So you can actually consider a good product if it's within the specs. You can consider the same product as bad because even if it's in the specs, it's actually more toward the tolerance. With the same kind of perspective, you look to the service, and either you get exactly what the customer is looking for, or you can still have the customer satisfied, but you didn't really cater for what he or she was looking for, and this is considered as a waste. Part of the process improvement is to define your own waste, and I spend a lot of time speaking with customers like you guys about what is the difference between the quality control and the quality assurance, because you think that quality and defect are the same thing, but they are not. They are related, but this one leads to the other. And quality assurance is that system that will get you to reduce defects, but quality control is the actions that you do to avoid these defects. There's a system and there's some defects, and we'll speak about that. So a lot of discussion about defects, but definitely it's one of the ways that we need to pay attention for. Overprocessing, and welcome to the reality of many companies. And since you guys are still in the startup and the very early start of your business, please design processes that are lean from the scratch, right? For those who have been in Cal Poly for some time, in any kind of activity, let me ask you a question. How many signatures do you need to have on a form, for example, if you are running an event or you'd like to have anything? And 4, 5, and lean, do you need all these basically signatures? Absolutely not, but this is the mentality of the risk management taking over the efficiency, right? And a lot of examples of the word processing. Why should we basically do 4 steps if we can do it in 2 steps? Why 3 documents if we can do it in 1 document? Why documents in the first place? Look into basically your processes very well and ask yourself, how can I make it simpler, faster, cheaper, more efficient? The other basically typical waste, and this is usually type 2 that you can totally eliminate, is the transportation. And transportation here is the waste associated with moving parts and material and components, right? And this is definitely something that we can't eliminate, but we can reduce. Motion on the other side still has to go with basically commuting things, but this relates to people, right? And again, this is maybe when you design your own office or you design your processes of manufacturing. If you can take 2 steps rather than 3 steps, do that. If you can bring things that are used around you, do that. I'm going to see some of the visual management tools that we discussed today catering for this waste, eliminating this waste. Waiting, this is typical waste, and usually waiting can be either in the form of waiting as in time, right? Customers are waiting for that, or waiting in terms of accumulated inventory. So we'll see inventory as another type of waste, but waiting and queuing are usually leading to accumulation of something, either customers lining up or products waiting in somewhere or some area, or a machine that's being blocked due to the failure of that machine, and a lot of work in progress accumulating behind that. So waiting is spending any time not flowing in the system. Spending any time, whether you are a customer or a product or a part, not flowing in the system, waiting for a raw material to come, waiting for a worker to show up. And this is a big thing, by the way. Also, when I go for manufacturing, workers' issues are the #1 issues in manufacturing, right? Coming from automotive, this is the most painful thing for any manufacturing team. And why? Because we have to wait for a lot of workers to show up. We usually have 80% or 90% of the workers, 10% on average absenteeism. This leads to waiting, usually going slowly, right? Inventory, and this is again part of usually inventory from a process perspective is a sign of how lean you are in your system. We are always looking for what we call one piece at a time. Pure lean thinking and the ideal lean situation is that a process or a part will go from upstream to downstream without any stoppage at any stage. And this is almost impossible. And you'll find that there are a lot of lean impossible dreams. One of them is this continuous flow without any inventory. Why do you think that this is an impossible state? Having zero inventory is an impossible state. Yes.
Any bottleneck.
Absolutely. Any system will have some kind of bottleneck. For the simple fact of variability and variation. Let alone for the lack of line balancing. Let alone for the you can't have everything just in time. You can dream of that, but it's almost impossible. So as much as we are categorizing inventory as a waste, we know deep inside that you can't bring this down to zero. Actually, bringing it to zero can hurt the system. Why do you think bringing inventory down to zero can hurt the system? So it will affect the stability of the process. Right? You need some inventory to hedge against that fluctuation, and sometimes to actually start up basically the line. So if the line has no raw material on it, how can it actually start? You have to fill it all the way up to a certain level where it can start actually going on. So inventory is a tricky decision usually, especially if you will speak about supply chain, not just the process, the whole supply chain. How much inventory, where to locate it, but extra inventory is definitely a problem. And one reason why it's a problem, it's a sign of inefficiency, and it's a sign and it can also conceal and cover a lot of the problems, a lot of issues. If you have big batches and you have quality issues, you will not feel the pain of that quality problem unless you really have a very small batch, because the good parts will cover for the bad parts. You don't realize that there's a problem happening except very late. So inventory also is another one. And overproduction, we call this the source of all evil, because going faster and producing more than what you need will always lead to either extra inventory, overprocessing, people moving around, big batches, So, and this is why lean thinkers and process improvement in general gears towards kind of small lot sizes and trying to produce what's needed, when needed, as needed, right? And this is the general philosophy of just in time. So trying to really reduce the batch sizes as much as possible to hedge and or to basically couple and lead with the demand. And this is also another very difficult, almost impossible state. Why? Do you think you can produce exactly what's needed when needed as needed?
You're forecasting.
Absolutely. You're always under the error of the forecasting technique or technology that you are using. With AI, again, with all these availability of information, that error is less, so you can do a better job. But you can't really think 100% of the demand. You can't. Right? So we can see the future, our life would be far, far better. But we can't. We're always trying to speculate, and overproduction is what the typical traditional mass production mentality, economy of scale mentality is trying to achieve so that they can cover for all these inventory mistakes. And overproduction need to make to stock. Lean thinkers and process improvement are not big fans of make to stock. They are trying always to be make to order as much as possible. Last but not least of these basically waste is what we call the unused creativity. And this is definitely in the stage of your business is something that you really need to really look for carefully, where and we're in an era basically where the skill gap among companies is what everybody is thinking about. So when we have people who are qualified with specific background or some credentials and you're not using them, it's like you're not using a physical capacity. Right? You have 5 machines and you're using only 4 machines. You have a mental capacity of that much and using that much, you are losing and wasting a lot of your skills. And at that stage of your business, definitely you need every single talent and skill to be utilized to the max as much as possible. But you can't afford basically to lose any of these. When you put these together, you end up with Mr. Tim Woods, right? So this is what I'd like you guys to keep in mind and refer to it in the waste. Tim Woods started to transportation, inventory, movement, waiting, overproduction, overprocessing, defects, and skills not used. So when I tell you put the glasses of Mr. Tim Woods on, meaning look to the process, dig deep, analyze, and see what type of waste are you actually hitting or you're encountering at any stage. Questions? Let's pause here a little bit and see what you guys feel about that.
I think your last slide, the one before this, is the most important slide in your presentation.
This one.
Because if you ever get to the point where you have a lot of people working for you, or like me, I've been on a company for 20 years. Everybody learns this. It just automatically keeps your company running as good as it would be. But you have to train it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And one person can't do it. And plus, people resist change, but if they're the ones making the change, you get a lot more buy-in, support, and save your ton of money, and make more efficient. It continues, it never ends.
Absolutely.
So you're saying you found a way to get everyone contributing whatever ideas.
But I mentioned that thing in Chicago wasn't just the printer standing in line and things. There was a lot of technical issues too, and it uncovered all of this stuff. I mean, there's no way we could go from a year backlog to 3 days backlog in literally about 3 months, 4 months. We did that. I did it all myself. In fact, I didn't do any of it. They did it all. We all went through the same training and everything, but it was all the workers. I mean, it was just ridiculous, the things that I found. I mean, we had this machine that tested all the product, and it was handmade from a factory in Japan, and the day we got it, it became obsolete because they kept making these products that didn't work on the machines. There was one Russian guy that knew how to fix everything that was made after the day the machine arrived. Ridiculous things like that.
What was the reward system for innovation, for ideas?
In that case, the Japanese had a bad habit of taking the best people and pigeonholing them and never letting them move because they're good at what they do and they don't want to lose them. So there was all these people handcuffed to these jobs. There was no career path, and they were losing people right and left. So the reward was, I told them, I said, get this thing working right, solve these problems. I'm going to take all of you. Luckily, I was the general manager of the division. I had like 20 people in that for all these people. And all of a sudden, their careers took off. The work gets happy, and everybody gets happy. And then everybody wants to come and work in my division. So, yeah, for me.
For some reason, I forgot to get you to let you give an example of waste, or I don't know why. Sorry for that. So, with the waste title, give us an example of waste in your company and introduce your company.
I'm an inventor.
Okay.
And I'm wasting time all the time. Because I think and think and I think and I doodle and I find myself making prototypes and it turns into manufacturing. And I'm just trying to figure it out.
You think you're wasting your time?
Well, no,
Right.
but it looks like that to everyone else.
Well, and it's a good point really to throw this in, that this concept of waste, as I said, it's very relative. So let me ask you a question. Quality control, is it adding value or actually not adding value? When you have a station at the line that's checking and measuring leads, go, no go, for a product, is this adding value or not adding value? No, adding value, not adding value.
You need the stations all along the process.
You need all these things. Okay, anybody else? And this is a very good discussion of exactly how waste is relative. So absolutely hardcore lean thinkers would say, well, the customer is paying you to do it the right thing at the right time for the first attempt. And if you mess up, it's your problem. It's not my problem as a customer. Why should I pay for this quality control? The other side of the story is, as a customer, I really would like to pay for some reliability and for some basically assurance that these things will not actually break it while I'm using it. So I'm okay with that, and it tells you how this can be how this can be relative, and it depends on the kind of industry. So in aerospace industry, where tolerance is zero, absolutely incoming process inspection, ongoing process inspection, outgoing process inspection, definitely you inspect. But if you're looking into, for example, mass production, well, maybe they actually take a sample later on then, right? And maybe quality control here is not what I'm really looking for. So creativity and innovation, waste or not, it depends. What's the value? Maybe the 10 failing attempts to get to that one good attempt that the customer is waiting for was actually worth it in a sense. You never know. Quality control, continuous debate. Yes.
Can I ask just real quick, how do you like run ideas of chain of command, or like, because it seems like everybody's contributing in an opinion to something. You got like too many cooks in the kitchen type of scenario. Like, how do you like organize that to say, oh hey, that's a great idea, we're gonna run with that, versus like trying out every single idea that
You know, probably every other week, whatever, we have to get together and do it and say, okay, small group of people. I mean, it's pretty simple, really. If the idea was a good idea, it made sense, and if it passed all the tests that we said, okay, even if it was, we weren't sure, I was willing to try it on a limited basis. And okay, fine.
Yeah. And we'll touch on this in the coming basically. We speak about continuous improvement. This is when you maintain that kind of culture. This way you can actually breed these kind of mentalities that everybody is willing to step forward and say, okay, I have an idea, I have something. I'm going to share with you some interesting stuff about that. Absolutely.
It gets more challenging if you have subcontractors, because I'm also you know, China, especially places like that, you have to figure out how to do this.
So, Mr. Tim Woods, remember that guy? I remember our waste and value things. And to end this first section of waste and value, this is a very popular slide with maybe different drawings, but it's the same thing. The word lean, by the way, was coined by an expedition that by Mr. Womack, who's an MIT professor, led around 30 or 35 different professionals and academicians to Japan in the late 80s, when things really became very clear that these guys are doing something that we're not doing here in terms of reliability and quality and all these things. So they spent some good time there, around 6 months, visiting different companies, different factories, different facilities, and they came back and wrote a very interesting report that became, after that, a famous book by Womack. And at that book, basically, they coined that term. They said, these guys are lean. They are not more advanced in terms of technology. They are not basically smarter than anybody else, but their processes and their systems and their supply chain is really lean in terms of they have what they need, exactly what they need as much as they need. And this was based on a lot of data and field work. It's a very interesting book. And in that book, that group basically said that we can summarize this whole lean thinking through this cycle. This is the cycle that they actually speak about. If you would like to really have this lean mindset and lean management, make sure you understand and capture the value of your customer. Make sure you have the banana analogy very clear, right? So, and this requires some good studying and investigation. What values are you really catering for? Because a value for a specific segment is different than a value for another segment. Once you capture that, you start to look into, and this is where you ask me about the how can I manage my process. This is where you start to look into the stream and the different processes that this value is supposed to be generated through, and you're catering for it. And this is where you map the stream, and this is what we call it the value stream mapping. So this is the value that I'm supposed to be looking after and catering for. I'm doing this through this stream. And if you manage to do that, you will ask yourself this question: can I create a continuous flow of this value along this stream? And if no, then why? And this is where all these Mr. Tim Woods start to pop up, and see all these kind of ways that actually stopping the value from flowing into this value stream. When you fix all these problems and the value is flowing seamlessly within that stream, you will start to hook up that stream with the true demand signal, right? So you're not just flowing for the sake of flowing, but you're flowing while being triggered by, as much as possible, a real demand signal. This is the concept of pull signal versus push, right? Instead of just forecasting and anticipating and pushing things from upstream to downstream and crossing your finger or asking your marketing teams, please push onto the customers, you're actually working along a kind of an accurate lean signal, demand signal, and the customer is actually pulling as they need. And you have a lean system that can actually respond to that pull signal as needed as much as possible. And again, this is a very challenging thing to happen, but you can get as close as possible, right?
When you say respond to customer pull, is it just what they're asking for, or is that feedback from the customer?
No, what they are asking for. So I always, if you like to basically have a visual of comparing push and pull, imagine that this is a production line, and basically this is the button to push the start of the production line. In a push system, the production engineer, based on forecasting, will push the production line every day based on a plan. In a pull system, it's the customer who can actually push that button. Okay, I need 5, I need 10, I need 5 A and B, and I need 6 D, C, and I need 7 D, right? And push and they are actually pulling what they need when they need. And this is very challenging. So it's not the easiest thing is make to stock. I have a forecast for the coming 6 months. I put the production plan accordingly. I produce, stuff it in the inventory, and hopefully I will sell it as anticipated. The other way around is to actually be smart enough to understand intelligently your market as much as possible. Be kind of ready 50%, 50%, but you're not fully committed until you have a true signal. So in Chrysler, for example, and this is not the ideal case, but when they try to do that, they actually, the dealers were saying, we are accumulating, this is back when we have a lot of cars like now. We have a lot of cars in our parking lots, and you guys are just dumping more vans on us and more trucks, and we're not selling that. So can we actually pull as we need when we need? When I have a customer walking in requiring a RAM, I just pull it and sell it. And this is again in the big facility like Chrysler, it's impossible. So the middle ground was, well, let's have a 6-month forecast, right, as we used to do, and we will allow you to change, but at least 1 month ahead. So we're going to freeze, if we are, for example, here in January, we're going to freeze February. Don't change February, but you're allowed to change in March. I'm already producing based on the forecasted plan of March, but I know that we can actually tweak it maybe 5, 10%, 20%, 30%, but there's a freezing window because I can't really be 100% coupled to the market. When you couple yourself to the market noise in a big manufacturing facility, it's kind of very difficult, impossible. And again, I don't want to scale things up because we are still in the startup phase, but understanding basically that the post-improvement mentality is a mentality that's actually driven by value, understanding that this value needs to flow in a stream, and that flow is triggered by a real demand signal. And for this to happen, you need to continuously strive for perfection. Right? And this will be our next topic after a quick break. But continuous improvement or Kaizen or pursuing for perfection is what makes this happen. Right? And this is what really they saw, for example, when they visited multiple facilities in Japan at that time. And they came up with this very famous cycle of lean thinking. This is what they refer to as lean thinking. It's the mindset of I'm value triggered. I know that this value needs to be seamlessly flowing in a map and in a stream. and triggered by a fault signal. And for this to happen optimally, I need to continuously improve and seek perfection.
Demin and Duran started in Japan too. Is he working with those guys, or is this just a
Who?
coincidence? You know, Demin and
Deming, yeah. Deming is a very interesting character. So this was a statistician, a professor of statistics, and he was very visionary enough in the 50s and 60s to shout and yell to all these big three and car manufacturers, hey guys, it's not all about cost. It was the mindset, the mentality from starting Ford 1906 all the way till 80s was mass production, cost driven. Right? The very famous motto of Ford, you can order any color as long as it is black, right? It tells you all the story. No variety, nothing, cost by economy of scale, and that's it. He said early on, we can live with that now, but you can't really live with it forever. Quality is part of the story. You have to cater for quality as a value. And this was something that's very weird in the 40s and the 50s. When big machinery, our whole accounting model is based on economy of scale, shut the whatever up. Okay? Who picked him? Good. So they invited him to Japan in the 60s, and he is the mentor of Mr. Shin, who's the quality guru of manufacturing. And he had the very famous 14 principles of quality that you need to really have statistical quality control, you need to listen to the process, you need to combat variation, don't be number driven, be process pattern driven. Out of the iceberg model, he actually preached that. And nobody listened to him here except in the 80s. He bounced back to the US in the 80s and started basically to coach out of other cities. But early on, and the Japanese, when they were actually rising up after the war, they realized that they can't compete with the Americans in terms of the cost and the volume. The machinery had been already pumping cars for 40, 60 years now. So how did they manage to get in? Quality and reliability. This was the new twist. I remember I was not actually yet an engineer at the time, but Ford in the 80s used to, the acronym that the manufacturing makers used to say about Ford is failed on road drive. Because basically it's your luck. You can get a good Ford and you can, the next one is basically bad one, right? There's no reliability, there's no real quality. This was the picture, late 70s, early 80s. And Deming came for the rescue for that, right? And this is what get actually this expedition going to Japan in the late 80s and 90s to realize that we are missing something. It's not technology, it's not production. We have been doing this for a long time, but we're missing something. This is basically that value driven of cost and quality in time. Okay, ready for some roller coaster? We're gonna actually go into a lot of tools, but actually I'm picking three very, very famous tools and then a list of some other tools to see how far we can go. And then we're gonna take another quick break and then we'll speak a little bit about lean culture. At this very early startup phase, you'll have a good opportunity to really instill that culture. So let's quickly go for some tools and then we'll go from there. The first and the most important basically tool slash framework slash mindset in the lean skill set and the lean tool set is what we call Kaizen. Kaizen in Japanese is actually Kai, means better and then change. So changing for the better, continuously changing for the better. The best way to formulate this is what Mr. Shingo said before, and I'd like you really to memorize this as a motto. Kaizen is improving every day, everywhere, everywhere. You can do this. You are set for perfection on that route of perfection sense. Improving every day, so this is something that will happen. It's not just one-time thing. Everywhere, so it's not just the quality people do that, or the production people, it's across the whole function of departments, and everyone, engaging everyone. It's extremely important, engaging everyone. I'll share with you the story. When I went to Japan a couple of times, each time spending 7 to 10 days, really obsessed with that. So we went with the team to the first Toyota facility, right, in Japan. And we were so excited to see where this whole story began. And they took us in a very quick tour in the facility, and definitely nothing impressive other than it's a very clean, lean facility. You don't see a lot of work in progress around, but this is not really what was impressive. And then they took us into what they call the Hall of Fame, kind of with the Japanese word, and they left us there for around an hour. And they came back and said, basically, this is exactly what we wanted you to see. What was this Hall of Fame about? It's about this Kaizen. It's a kind of a chronological map, historical map of who did what to improve what kind of process, whether this was a worker or a supervisor or a team. in the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s, the pictures and the names of the teams and the individuals and what they did in terms of improving a process or improving a product or fixing a problem. And they came back to us and said, this is what made Toyota Toyota. If you were coming to see a magnificent line or a high-tech line, actually, this is not the case. You guys in the US have even more advanced machinery and technology, but this is what we are. Right? It's the engagement of everyone, the involvement of everyone in this Kaizen process. We are in a continuous improvement cycle, and nobody is actually missed out in that. So continuous improvement, right? This is something that you have to believe in if you like to have a process improvement mindset in your company. The way I like to look at it, and this is kind of my way to look at it, is that it's an ecosystem. Right? It's a methodology that you follow, and it's a platform that you run these things in, which is like an event, and it's a reporting system, which is the A3. And these three terms are very famous in the lean world or in the process improvement world. Everybody knows the PDCA cycle. I'm going to actually go through it now. Everyone have been involved in the Kaizen events, multiple Kaizen events, whether long or short, and there's another term for it. Sometimes they call it FIT, focused improvement team. It's like basically a group of commanders who just attack a specific process for a very focused amount of time and then leave after fixing that. And the most important thing is the A3. We can spend some extra time. And I know this would be the longest tool that I spend time with, because this is very important. If you can pick up this talent and skill of developing A3s as you go for every single problem that you, or every single improvement that you are actually working on, this will ensure that you are a learning organization, that you can pass this to different workers in your organization. So let's start with the PDCA cycle. And as you will see in all lean tools, they are very intuitive, they're very simple. There's really nothing difficult or rocket science about it. So what the lean thinkers actually do in order to solve any problem, they go in 4 steps. They plan for, so they basically start with the plan, and the planning phase is the most time-consuming phase in general, the data-driven phase. They go to capture the current state of the problem. And this is very important. And you have to go to the Gemba. Gemba is a Japanese word that refers to the action location, the production line, the machine itself, the customer teller, for example, line of visibility. This is where the problem is happening, or where you like to improve. You have to go yourself and capture the problem, gather the data, right? Identify the issue and analyze the current state. I have a problem now. It's very clear that there is a bottleneck here, or the line is imbalanced, or there is an accumulated defect rate there, or customers are waiting in extended lines here and there. You go multiple times, you measure what's happening, and you start to understand the current situation. You come together as a team, collective intelligence, experience, plus thinking outside the box, and you develop some ideas, right, to solve this problem. And you end up with kind of a hypothesis that, well, I'm going to actually try this first and see what will happen, or try this and that. You don't just jump into it and see what and fix anything that comes to your mind. And wow, it's fixed. But when I ask you what happened exactly, what did you do to fix that? Well, I just tried a couple of things and it worked. You have to document that. So this is the planning phase. It takes usually a long time, but this is basically what you do: capture the current state, do some analysis, and pick a solution that you would like to implement. Next, you implement, just go and execute that idea. You do that suggested solution, and then you check whether it worked out or not, based on what you actually suggested at the beginning. It's very important that check thing is to make sure that you are actually measuring with the same KPIs. If you went and measured the current state in time, you check the performance in time. If you went and measured the accumulated inventory level, you go and check the impact on the inventory level. Compare apple to apple. As simple as it sounds, people usually miss on that. So you go and observe what happened after you implement that solution, and if it is good, excellent, then you act upon that, scale it up, roll it up, and see how can you move forward. If it's bad, if it's actually less than what you expected, you go through this analysis. Why did this happen? How can I fix the problem? Maybe I need to pick another solution. Maybe I need to take more data. So whether it's a positive or negative result, you need to act and actually document the action that will that you took, right? Because this is how you gain learning. PDCA cycle. So this is the very simple methodology, and it helps you to think. Right? The lean tool here is trying to give you guidance on how to think about the problem. It will not solve the problem, you will solve the problem. But this is how you think about it, right? So always capturing the current state and then analyzing that state, suggesting a future state, go and try to implement that future state, and then act upon the results. Did you close the gap? Did you fill the discrepancy? Did you fix the problem? Good result, bad result, and act upon that. The PDCA cycle. Questions? Simple. Six Sigma has another cycle very close to that, with the delay, but it's again the same idea. So PDCA cycle, the very famous cycle of Kaizen. Now, while doing that, I do this usually in, as I said, in a Kaizen event. Right? So, for example, you call your production engineer, your quality control inspector, your purchasing individual, your financial team. You get everybody from different perspectives so that you can think together in a room like this, and you say, okay, guys, we are actually after this problem. Let's go and gather data. Let's do the PDCA cycle. In order to document that, you go through a reporting cycle called the A3. The A3 it's a sheet that's A3 size. Right? This is how Toyota used to do it, and it became kind of a mindset of process improvement in general. You choose any format for that A3. Can be 9 boxes, 4 boxes, and I'm going to show you the full-fledged version of it, but it can be less than that. And the whole idea about the A3 is that you start to document and capture what you are doing during the PDCA cycle or multiple cycles, and you are documenting this. You are capturing the learning that's happening in your company. If you don't do that, you are losing big time. In order to be a learning organization, you need to actually capture what you're doing, whether it's a failure or a success. I met a manager for one of the R&D, very famous R&D centers in Switzerland. And he was telling me that I have a habit every day to spend around half an hour or 1 hour reading the previous A3s of the different previous teams before I even join the company. It gives me very high perspective or very comprehensive perspective of what happened before and what they learned. You're going to see that design of the A3 is very easy to follow and it's very easy to learn from. At Chrysler in the R&D, of course, it's the top secret thing. Even as teams, we can't access each other basically reports. I was part of the product development team in the R&D. The only folder that had multiple access to everyone was the black belt A3 reports for everyone. These are success stories that everyone can actually look at and learn. Whether you are part of the painting team or the design team or the power train team, whatever your team is, you will learn something if you just make it the habit to read the A3s. So the A3 is the capturing of the tacit knowledge into something that people can share and pass on along. Because in the lean thinking, there is no room for job security by keeping the knowledge to yourself. If this is your mindset, you don't belong to the lean environment. We are all in this, we engage in this, we write it down, and we pass it on. Right? So this is kind of the do's and the don't do's of an A3. Make sure that it is a kind of a narrative, has a beginning and a middle and an end story. I'm going to show you how to do that. It's usually, this is a living document along the whole life cycle with the whole project. By the way, all these slides, I'll ask Maddie to share it with you, so don't worry about it. Write my comments if you like, but don't worry about these content. I'm going to pass it to you. So let's look into how to develop an A3 in general. And again, one of the very important things about the A3 that it's actually developed by the whole team. It's a consensus building tool also. So nothing will be written in that document except we all agree on it. Right? So usually it has a title of who is doing what and a reviewing, basically supervision team. All these things are just cosmetics. Now the first box that you need to actually make sure that you write on that A3 is the reason for action. Right? And this is a very good checkpoint because there are a lot of good things that you can do, but you shouldn't be doing. You don't have enough time, you don't have enough resources. It's not what adds value to the customer. There are a lot of good things out there, but we have to really have a burning platform. Why should we do that? That's why any improvement team, any improvement project has what we call a chart. You have to convince me as a manager or convince yourself that this is a project worth basically going forward. Again, for Chrysler, Chrysler, there is, for example, one of the checkpoints. If you're not going to save at least $1 million in that project, don't even bother showing it to your manager. the time is much more valuable than that. There are a lot of good things that you can do. You can save 100 here, 200 there, but with the skill set that we have in these teams, we need to really save some good money, right? I'm not saying that it's that cut off of the cost, but there are a lot of things that you need to really justify. And the reason for action can be something that relates to the customer level, right? So something the customer is really suffering from, and this is definitely a very high priority. Something at a specific unit, right? This is an internal pain point, and usually based on my consulting experience, most of the Lean Six Sigma projects are things like related to the business unit. There is a problem with my production. There's a problem with my finance. These are good things, but I don't see that this is the right starting point. I like projects that start with here. We have a problem reaching out to the value of the customer. We have a problem basically satisfying this customer expectation. Now we are really value driven, right? But anyways, and sometimes it's actually a specific located problem. Machine is failing. Workers are actually messing up here. There is a clear bottleneck in that flow of products. At any level, you need to have a clear reason why you're doing that. This is the reason of action. First box, right?
Hang on. There you go.
Yeah, okay. The second box, and again, this is kind of the ideal fully-fledged E3. Some of them are less than that, but these are the fundamental boxes that you have to have in a document. Is what we just said in the plan, initial state. You really summarize and in more figures and tables rather than just writing what's the current state, right? So the current state, we are actually lagging behind by 20%. Our first time yield is only 60%. Our customer satisfaction rate is declining in the last 3 months. And you visually capture that. So you capture the current state and the problem with it. And then as a team during this Kaizen event, you sit together and say, okay, let's envision the future state. This is what you actually capture here. Right? This is basically the target state of the future state. I would like in the window of the coming 6 weeks to go up from 70% to 80%. I'd like my changeover time to be reduced from 8 hours to maybe just half an hour, right? Instead of having one whole shift down. And you start to capture and visually try to capture the future state and make it a balance between an ambitious state and at the same time realistic state. Don't make it an easy, low-hanging fruit. And then very logically, if this is the current state and this is the future state, then you do kind of a gap analysis. Why I'm not here? Why is that gap happening? Why is this 4% missing? Why is these customers are these customers basically not really responding? The gap analysis rule, the gap analysis tools, fishbowl analysis, whatever, there are a lot of things that you can do for that gap analysis. And based on that gap analysis, if you do a good sort of gap analysis, it will open the door for the solution, right? So it's very clear that the reason that this state is not meeting that state based on the gap analysis, I have a problem with my workers, I have a problem with my materials, I have a problem with my supplier, I have a problem with my client balancing. It's very clear from the gap analysis what would be the kind of the outline of the expected solution. That solution will lead to a plan, right? That's okay. Based on the solution, that's implemented. We can implement it partially using some rapid experimentation if resources and time allow for that. If not, we can go directly for the completion plan and say, okay, this is the plan. Who will do what? Typical the 4 W's: who, where, what, when, and how much, basically. And then when you, and by the way, you can see that this is the PDCA cycle, P, 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 P. Right? This is the PDCA cycle captured in here. P, 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 P. And then this is a D and a D. Right? So you do the plan, and then you compare basically the confirmed state with the target state. And again, use the same KPIs, speak the same language, time, inventory, quality. Right? Don't really be under this elusive impression that you did a great job because you're using a KPI that's different from the pain point that you captured here. So this is the C of the PDCA cycle. The check in that box, right? Is this equal to that or not? And if yes, great, keep going. If no, why? And all this analysis happens in this last box, insights. Why is this not matching that? Or what good did you do for this to match that? What can be the next cycle? What can be the next improvement plan for that? Where can we go from here? This is a very important learning experience. That same manager said, if I don't have time to read all the A3, I usually go to that box number 9, because this summarizes everything and tell me about the insights, right? and the thinking of the whole team. This document, basically, the A3 is a very famous document. It's not a document, it's a process captured in a document. It's the PDCA cycle that engages a Kaizen team through a document that will live and will tell the story and will be beneficial in learning and passing this on. This is kind of a quick summary of what we call the Kaizen ecosystem, and the continuous improvement ecosystem. A methodology, a team, and a documentation. Questions? Clear? Okay, excellent. So, do you recall any of the Kaizen events quickly to share with us? Any Kaizen event that you'd like to share with us? You guys do an AV like that, or
There's a whole bunch. Well, one I told you about, the big one. For my own company, I had one where I made a product and we was mounted too much quality control, not enough quality control. Literally, the problem I had is just before Christmas, we ordered a couple 100,000 of these license plate frames that I invented. Put on the brakes, lights up, no wires or anything connected in the car. We ordered about, whatever it was, 100,000 of these things or something. Coming out, one of their engineers changed the part. The golden rule is don't ever change the part without telling us. And the 12-cent part. And the result of that part was that instead of the batteries lasting 6 months, they lasted 3 days. Well, we instantly found out. And the problem is we're selling all through Amazon. I don't know if Amazon, maybe you guys could sell them clothes or whatever, but you send them 100,000, the first thing they do is they break down those master cards and they send 3 here, 3 there, 3 everywhere. We had already sent 100,000 out.
and that changed when you guys captured it to a Kaizen event, when a lesson like that.
Well, we went back, I had to report over to rewriting all our manufacturing processes and everything, just so that if anything like that happened, we could catch it ahead of time without adding too much cost and bearing ourselves too many checks and balances. You know, this kind of came after, but this is why you need a closed loop system.
Exactly, and this is what closes the loop. This box is very important because it closes the loop. And again, I asked the question to really also tell you that we can do this. So I saw a Kaizen event that a manager did for an email problem. That she was actually being bombarded by a lot of emails and wasting a lot of her time. So can you guys please solve this problem? All the way to it is in a C-suite retreat, an outcome of a C-suite retreat that was for 3 or 4 days with top management was an A3 that they basically shared with everybody else. So it is a mindset, it's a mentality from an email problem all the way to trying to capture the true root of content. Right? Okay, so moving on. Now let's look into another very popular tool that actually opened the door for a lot of other tools. What we usually do as consultants when we look into any factory or any facility, right, is this tool, the value stream mapping. And this will answer your question about how can we really understand what are the problems and manage the processes. The answer is map the process, and in lean thinking, we use this value stream mapping. And then from its name, we are trying to map the stream that generate the value, whether it's a production or a service, right? We're trying really to go from mapping the stream from this very irregular stream, and how can we think of a better stream that's really seamless and actually flowing without any problem, right? We are trying really to understand what's happening, right? We capture the stream, we put the Tim Woods eyes on, gloss on, and then we dream, envision, plan, design this future state. Value stream mapping is usually, this is a 1 day or 1.5 day exercise, so I'm not really gonna go into the details, but I'll give you an overview of it, right? But first, you need to understand that we do this for products and for services also. Although for products it's much easier to do it, for services it's a little bit tricky. Sometimes you don't use this direct value stream mapping, you use some kind of other flow charting, and then you map it to the value stream, but it's applied for both of them. This is how a typical value stream map will look like at the end, right? This is basically a map that will visually let you see what's happening and the associated waste and time with it. This is not a layout map. This is not how the facility look like in reality, right? But this is the story of the product. It's basically as if I mounted a camera on this mug, right? And I actually have a camera on the order of the customer, right? And basically I'm capturing what's happening from the order all the way till the order is fulfilled and back to the customer. This is the story. Value stream mapping capture the story, right? And it starts basically with providing at a glance what is the demand kind of forecasting or management happening. Do you have orders? Do you have daily orders, monthly orders, weekly orders? Who received the orders, right? So there's an information flow that you capture first, right? Starting from the customer, and then you see how this information flow is captured by the material flow. So the order, for example, I put an order, the production control receives it, put some planning and order some raw material. The raw material arrives here with this time, with this much. And also it tells you a lot about the details of every single process. Right? So this is the control process, the production control process. It tells you about the details of every process. So every process that adds a value or engaged in the story of this product will be measured in terms of what's the cycle time, how many workers there, what's the defect rate, what's the uptime, if it's a machine, what's the changeover time if you're working between product families. If it's a service, what, for example, how many workers are involved in every single service. And then it's actually based on this, when you visualize everything like that, and you can see what's happening, you can easily see where you need to have a Kaizen event. So for example, if I know, this is a capture of how much work in progress is stuck between station 1 and station 2, for example. And this is how much work in progress stuck between station 2 and station 3. You can easily see that I have a lot of work here. This is a bottleneck. Let me basically reduce that. Or from the data, I can see that changeover time between product A and B is around 3 days. It's too long. Or from the data, I can see that the average downtime of this machine is actually maybe 30% or 40%, which is huge, right? So the beauty of that exercise, right, and I'm telling you quickly how can we do it, is that it visually gives you this bird's view of what's happening in the facility. You can put your Tim Woods glasses on and see what's happening, right? So usually the outcome of this value stream map is multiple Kaizen events. Once you have multiple Kaizen events, you go to the PDCA cycle and all these things. So it's a blueprint and a roadmap for what you can do for the coming 6 months, for example, if you do a good value stream mapping at the beginning. Another very interesting thing that it captures for that is this line KPI here. So one of the very important information that you come out with in this exercise is to see the real value added time versus the non-value added time. Usually the real value added time is the touch time of these machines. So this is a drilling machine, for example. This is a shaping machine. This is a surface finishing machine. The customer is willing to pay for that. But between this machine, so this took around maybe 2 seconds, 30 seconds, 2 minutes, maybe some assembly for maybe 20 minutes. But the waiting time here, because we change this into a time, we change this into a time, very simple equations, and you find that basically it waited here for 40 minutes, for 2 hours, and the finished good inventory for 3 days. And this is where the 90% versus the 10% data that I showed you at the beginning come from. That in the whole story of this order, the real value added time that we capture here, for example, see this, the real value added time here is 192 seconds, and it took 8 days to fulfill the order. So in the 8 days, almost 3 minutes only that the customer is going to pay for. And the rest, somebody is stuck here or stuck here or stuck here or waiting for something to come. Typically manufacturing, a little bit less acute in service, but it's the same story. How can we know where the time is wasted? Put the Tim Woods glasses on, and you will find a lot of potential for improvement. And this is why the next step, usually after the current value stream map, is putting the future state map. And the future state map, this is where we dream. What can we do better? Can we, for example, eliminate this whole waiting? Can we combine these two together? Can we reduce the inventory here? Can we have a better uptime for the machine? Right? You basically look into where can we generate more value, where can we eliminate the waste, where can we flow as much as possible without any stoppage, and if I can't flow, where can I pull? Have this kind of very well designed inventory to pull from, so that I can at least cap the accumulation of the inventory in the system, and how can I make the system perfect? Once you design the future state map, this will be your target Kaizen. You reach it, it will be the new current state map, and you go for another value stream mapping, another value stream mapping, all the way till you reach perfection. This is the beautiful, powerful tool called the value stream map, VSM. I'll send Maddie a book. I suggest you guys read it. It's called Learning to See. This is kind of the Bible of value stream mapping. Every single practitioner who did value stream mapping and doing value stream mapping refer to this book. I can even send it. I don't know if I have it in my USB or not, but I can. Yeah, I think I have it. I can share it with you guys now. Learning to See. It's a book that can summarize a lot of what we discussed so far. Questions? I'm moving very fast. You're drinking from a hose. So, how are you guys doing with that hose?
In your consulting career, have you done much? Have you applied this much to service problems?
Yes, but not that many, but mainly in the healthcare system. So, yeah, so the healthcare system, they are also big fans of that. Mapping the flow of patients in, how much they get stuck in the admission, the ER average time, all these kind of stuff. Yeah.
I went to work for the Japanese company that taught me all this. They were great at manufacturing, but they couldn't figure out how to.
And this is why, yeah, and the disclaimer I said at the beginning, in the service, sometimes this is challenging, and we usually go for maybe some flow charting, swim lane, other mapping, but and we load some information into it, and then we try to get as close as possible. The value stream map is definitely very well clear in the manufacturing, the service. Now, if you can map something else that can give you the Kaizen event potential, go ahead for it.
Yeah, I spent over 30 years doing that.
But avoid layout mapping. The problem is people start to do the map of the layout and say, okay, here's the system. I'm not interested in the layout. Layout has a different problem, that a lot of the motion waste, but I'm interested in the process itself. Value stream mapping tells the story of a process, not a system. Sorry, of a product, not a system. This is a product story. Again, this is a product story. It's not a system story or a process story. This is why in the same facility, you can find 7, 8 value stream maps, depending on which kind of product are you trying to map. Questions? Clear? Online, guys? Clear?
Nothing yet.
Nothing? Is it clear, Jen, my voice moving around?
Yeah, we haven't gotten anyone saying.
Give us heads up if there's a problem. Okie dokie. You guys are holding tight. Good. Let's move on. So this is again the 10 steps of how you do a value stream map quickly. I mean, you select one value stream map for a product or a product family. You go walk the physical flow and capture the process, and then you go again in the flow and gather the data. Number 3, it takes a lot of time. Usually, a lot of our engineering interns work in that step number 3 because it's not just one-time visit to get the data. To be very elusive, you can go the data, for example, early shift Monday, or the late shift Friday, or just on Wednesday. You need to go in every single time gather some good data to get the average true data. And then you draw the value stream map. By the way, this value stream map, current value stream map, is what you put in the box number 2, the A3. For example, to speak into the current state. Put your basically Tim Woods glasses on and see what opportunities that you can improve and ways you can eliminate. Based on this, you draw basically the future state map, which is box number 3 in the A3, and then generate that plan to go from the current to the state, because usually there are 5, 6, 7, 8 Kaizen events that need to happen. So plan for that, and then start making what's happening, PDCA cycle, do and check, and then conduct the value stream mapping again and again and again till you reach perfection. Okay, now let's move into a third, basically very important concept in lean thinking and process improvement. So we spoke about Kaizen ecosystem, continuous improvement. We spoke about value stream mapping, a very popular, very popular principle, and that comes with some tools in the process improvement is the visual management. And simply speaking, a good lean place or system is a system that can speak to you and actually flashes the abnormality. So if you walk in, for instance, if you walk in now in this room, right? If you just walk in now, what would you say about the room? Did somebody use the room? Did somebody fix the room after usage? No. You can see from the arrangement of the chairs, the system is speaking to you and telling you that there is somebody was here, somebody didn't put their chairs back, right? Somebody was eating a banana and left the peel here. No, it's not happening. So the process, the system can speak to you. Visual management principle is based on what gets measured and displayed get done and corrected. And if you clean, and this is why, for example, if you go into any quality control room, you'll always find very bright lights out there. You'll never find a dim light or a yellow lamp, for example. You need everything that's very clear and white, so that every single scratch or impurity or anything can easily be visualized. You can catch it, you can see it, right? When you go into the inspection room of the selected car to be inspected, flashlight white, flashlights here and there, so that you can see every single scratch. It can visually be very, very clear. This is the same thing in the whole system. We would like to design our workplace, our process, our every single cubicle or station in a way that if there's any abnormality, we can capture. This is number one. Number two, when this is a higher level of visual management, if there is an abnormality, I'd like to know how far I am from the normal state and what is the right standard. So part of the visual management is to also display the standard. So here is where you are and here where you should be. So I can see that I'm off and I'm off by that much. And even a much better design of the visual management system is here where you are, here where you should be, and here what you need to do to go there. Right? So if I can capture the current state using visual management, this is a good first level. If I can compare it to a standard, this is a great second level. If it can guide me to what to do in a very intuitive, simple way, so that everybody can fix it, then this is the best visual management system design. You guys follow? Clear? So let's go through this quickly. What does this do to us? What's this? This is a traffic light. This is a visual management system. Basically, it's very easy to understand. Since we were little kids, we know that red, you stop, yellow, you get ready, green, you go, right? And red is a universal color of being cautious, there's something wrong. Green is a universal language color, basically, that things are okay. And we can control a system called intersecting roads without a lot of training for people by using this very simple visual management. This is kind of what we are speaking about here. Right? So what are visual controls? This visual control is an easily identifiable signal or system or standard or display that highlights a condition and links it to a set of actions. So here, for example, a production log. This is, for example, you produce 600, but by this time you should have produced 800. You need to speed up this machine a little bit, right? Visually, everybody can see. Component of a good visual control, as I said, you show the current condition. If you can compare it to a standard and if you can link it to an action, this would be great. The bottom line, they are efficient, self-explaining, self-regulating, self-ordering, self-improving, and worker managed. If you can manage to have your workplace like that, through a lot of standards and a lot of good measurement at real time, you can visually manage the whole process. Okay. As I said, there are some very simple rules. For example, if you, for example, put a display or a standard that for something to happen and you can't read it from 10 foot close, you have to get closer to that, or you can understand within 3 seconds, then this is a badly designed standard or a display. What are you trying to tell me? Or I have really to look very far in that and read all the things. It's a bad design display versus very clear as a worker. I'm coming into a station. It's very clear that this is the right orientation. This is the wrong orientation. It doesn't really take that much time. I can easily see it. I can easily read it. I can easily do it. All right. And this is very important because you will always do what we call the SOP. So this is a very important thing to keep in mind. Part of the visual management is what we call SOPs, standard operation procedure. Whatever you're doing, make sure that it's not here. It's captured in an SOP. And these SOPs need to be very well designed, visual more than articulate as much as possible. Right? This is part of capturing the know-how. This is part of communicating, for example. One of my friends used to work in Ford when we were actually putting together a facility in China. And he told me about how difficult and how easy it was to deal with the Chinese counterparts using SOPs that the more they were articulated, the more basically we got stuck because of the language barrier, and the more they were visual. As engineers, we can easily communicate that yes, this is the powertrain station, this is where we're going to have worker 1 or worker 2, because everything is actually captured visually. Versus if you have an SOP that's just written in lines, right? You need somebody to explain that, for example. But it's very known, right? So for good visual control, easily recognized, commonly known language, right? Anybody speaks French here? Judy, when she comes from Paris, right? Parlez français. I have a Canadian citizenship also, so we speak English and French in Canada. And if you go to a restaurant, for example, and you find a faucet with a C on it, what does this tell you? Cold, right? So you basically go and with a very confident manner, you open it and you put your hand in that. Actually, in French, chaud means hot. So if you speak French and you see a C here, then you definitely go to the other one and open it because this is the hot one, right? And then you get your hand burned because C and H are not a universal language. But if you see red and blue, what happens? You know that definitely the red one is the hot and the blue one color is more universal. So commonly known languages in general that can be understood, working with, for example, workers that have don't have the background about whatever you like to try to communicate to them, for example, education barrier or whatever. This is how we design our SOPs. It's very important. I always, when I consult with startups like you guys, I ask them, do you guys have an SOP for what you just told me? Right? How do you assemble a drone, for example? How do this, and that? Do you have an SOP for that? Do you have a standard procedure? Do you have anything that can capture that? If not, then this is a good area to work on. Visual management system can also lead you to manage processes in a very simple way. So this is a bank with a teller. And basically what happens if customers keep coming like that and it's only one teller, the problem here is with the bank manager. Bank manager has, for example, 2 or 3 tellers, that's it. They need to do a lot of frontline issues and a lot of backline reviewing checks, reviewing credit history. He or she can't really put all the tellers just at the line of visibility. This will consume all the resources and nothing will be happening at the back end. So here's what that manager did. He realized that if it's only one teller, customers will be waiting like that, accumulating in a queue, customers are unsatisfied. This is not how to do business. At the same time, if we put all our tellers here, nobody will do the back line, the back office work. So here is a better design of the system. Very simple training to the tellers. Guys, once we cross the 1 bar line, then we can't have only one teller. Once we cross this, then I need another teller. Once we cross the 2 bar lines, we need the 3rd teller. So just a very simple training. Once when they are hired, look to the line. Keep just looking the line. When I have this worker, once I have the 4th customer coming in across the line, this is where this teller basically will leave whatever he or she is doing at the back office, come in and basically serve the customers till we clear the queue a little bit. If the queue keeps coming in and we hit this one, then the 3rd one can come because customers can't really wait. This is a high priority value, right? Once we start to clear that, as simple as that, right? So adding more tellers based on this. For example, if you'd like to control an office, this is a law office, for example, and you'd like your intern lawyers to work on cases, this is what you give them at the beginning of the day. Right? I will check. So I need, for example, from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m., 4 cases to be done. And before lunch, basically, another 4 cases. If you come as an office manager at 12:30, for example, and you find other files here, you know that you are late. If you're at 12:30 and everything is clean before 12:30, you are on time, you are going as target. Visual management, or managing things basically visually, the process can easily speak to the people what they need to do. Here? Okay, and all these beautiful benefits for visual management. Reduce the waste, of course, drive standardization because you have to put some standards, right? Improve the service for the customers, improve communication, and all these things. A very famous tool for the visual management is 5S, but before reaching or getting into the 5S, any questions, any comments about visual management? I'm going to go for the 5S, and this will be the end of the tools in details, and give you a quick overview for the other tools, and then we go for the yes.
So say, for example, we take on like an intern and they're going to be doing a wide variety of things. So you can't really say like, hey, 4 cases need to be done by here, another 4 cases. Do we just kind of map out the day on a daily basis and say, hey, like just check in with me at lunchtime, see where you're at, and we'll reevaluate?
Absolutely. Or he doesn't need to check in with you. You can check in online, for example, right? This is one way to do, right? This is one way to manage some workers with human power without being physically there or instructing them what to do. Absolutely. Yeah. Very famous visual management tool, and some people actually equate this to visual management. They say, oh, visual management is only 5S, but it's a very famous, popular one. And you can look at it as a tool that can either fix your work space area, making it a better work area, or fix the whole system, the whole facility. It's a mindset, and it's basically a way of thinking. It's a step-by-step process, but it's a whole way of thinking than just thinking about it as something that will clean up your space. Although usually when I teach this to my students, I give them the assignment to 5S, either their house or their kitchen or their basically office, and I ask them to take a picture before and after, and I see a lot of funny stuff from honest students. Yeah, we are basically, for those who have kids, for example, imagine you're walking into your kid's room and they're 3 or 4 years old, and you tell them basically, I need this to be cleaned in 1 day. Impossible. Unless we do some 5S. Anyways, so let's look into what is 5S. So 5S is a process to visually manage and rearrange and clear and clean your working area using 5 steps. Each one of them starts with an S. And in Japanese, it starts with an S also, by the way. So somebody took some effort to find the English word for this. It starts with an S. It starts with sorting, straightening, standardizing, straightening, scrubbing, standardizing, and then sustaining. Quickly, let's go into each one of them. But in general, if you would like to walk away with something like every day, everywhere, everyone for Kaizen, 5S is this. Everything has a place, everything is in its place, and ready for use. And if you can arrange your work area, your house, your kitchen, your room, your office in that manner, then life will be much easier and faster, and more lean and less waste, less inventory. So sorting, basically, this is the first step, and this is the most painful step, because this is when you take a decision to separate necessary items from non-necessary items. If you walk into an office or a working station or a cubicle or a production facility and you ask somebody, what is this? And they will tell you, oh, wow, I forgot, what's that? Or why is this here? I don't know. Then this thing doesn't belong here, definitely. We try to take everything that doesn't belong to the place or doesn't belong to the place now, or at least in the coming maybe 5 hours or day, and take it away. Only what belongs to this working area or this cubicle or this station or the stage, and you need it really in the coming very short period of time, maybe a shift or a day max, and anything else, just take it away. Where? This is a different question. You can throw it, you can rearrange it, you can put it another way, place, you can sell it, you can lease it. It depends. We call this red tagging. You put a red tag on it and you take a decision about it later on. But sorting is separating what's necessary from what's not necessary. And then your lab, so we took off of we have 100 parts here or things, we took 80 out, we're left with 20. What will you do with these 20? This is the straightening basically stage. This is where you have finding a permanent location for every single item, right? So, and the address and the location of these items is functioned on in the frequency of usage. So if this is the pen that I use every second, this will be here. If this would be the stapler that I use only once the whole shift, then I'll put it there, right? Because this will take 2 steps to grab it and coming back. I will do this once. If this is a tool that needs, or an assembly, for example, pneumatic tool that will get some screws fitting in, then yes, I need to have it handy in a way. The idea is designing the workspace in a way that will have everything will have a place, and that place is as close as possible depending on the usage frequency. So this is straightening. And then once everything is clear, so I took 80 items out, these 20 have been arranged and things are good, I start to really make things clean and shine, right? I scrub things and make cleaning as a system to make sure that everything is visually clean and clear. And it's not just cleaning system, although it's important, but designing things to be clean, for example. So instead of having coffee scoops, basically, and you can have things on the ground. You put it in packets, ensuring that even if you try really to mess things out, you can't, right? How you put the cables together, designing a way, the system in a way that it's actually clean. There's a very famous video, I think Sanyo or Sony CEO, he was doing one of these Gemba walks. These managers, by the way, usually have at least once a month a walk in the facility to check what's going on and to always be close to the Gemba. Gemba is the place of action. So he walks like that, then he stops. He walks back, lean below a machine and scrub it like that and show everybody that there is some oil here and it's not clean. Give me a break. This is a manufacturing facility. A machine will definitely have some oil and you're grabbing it from below. Who will care about that? He will send a very clear message. It's not a matter of what people see, it's a matter of that we are clean. And the system is clean even if nobody sees it, right? And this is, it's a mindset, it's a mentality. So when you sort everything out and you straighten what's left, you clean and shine everything else, now you lock this new beautiful reality through standardization. This is where, for example, a lot of color coding happen, a lot of shadow boarding happen, right? Everything is exactly have a specific location, the same size, the color is very clear. If it's red, it needs to go there. If it's blue, it will be here. And you start to make things much easier really to be locked in, right? And make sure that this is basically a system. Usually, 5S departments make usually do some kind of competition who will make more 5S. There's a 5S scoring procedure for that. And different departments will have different appetite towards 5S. So maintenance people, for example, will always hate you if you try 5S. You always hate it because they are the people who have everything around them just in case. All types of tools, all types of things. You ask them, why are you putting this here? Maybe I will find I need it for a specific problem. And inventions, right? You have everything around you, maybe you'll use it for a prototype. I can imagine. Think about the garage basically of a lot of us. It's very difficult to 5S that. So, to summarize what I said, this is what I'd like you to do. From here, this is how our kitchen looks like, our garage, our workspace. We will still have some of these, but in this way. As simple as that. Everything has a place. Everything is in its place and ready for use and see. Can you put the fork here? It's very clear it's not. Can you put the, for example, knife here? Can you put the spoon there? You can't, right? So going from here to there is 5S. And as cleaning and housekeeping as it sounds, but believe me, in the process mindset, it helps you a lot to identify what are the waste and what needs to be done, what needs to be here, slashing inventory, removing extra steps. It leads to a lot of improvement. Il n'y a pas de questions? Any questions? So before the break, I know we are up for a break. Let me basically tell you that what we discussed so far with the lean tools, actually, I picked 3 very popular tools / principles, right? Continuous improvement with some tools like the PDCA and the A3, the value stream map, the mapping principle, or the value stream map as a tool, and then the visual management as a principle, or the 5S as a tool. But there are a lot of other very popular tools. Like if you would like to implement a pull system, right? There's the Kanban tool. But how can you think of a pulling signal system that will make the process and the replenishment system speak to one another so that you can pull the material when needed and pass the finished good to the customer when needed, where needed, as needed. So this is another discussion. If you're interested, you can actually go for it. Pokayoke is also a very famous lean tool. This is basically a Japanese expression meaning mistake proving. How can you design a process or a product or a product in a way that even if you are intentionally trying to make a mistake, it will not let you make a mistake. If you are trying, so for example, if you're trying to put, for example, wrong electric socket into this plug, it will not let you through, right? Because this basically is designed to a specific socket shape, for example, right? A lot of examples in our life. So a lot of the automotive, I'm trying to get out of the automotive mentality, but For example, when you have your extra speed pedal is blocked intentionally, if you try to press to get to 200 miles, you can't unless you intentionally go to the dealer and block it. I like to die and block it. SNED is a very famous tool also for reducing the changeover from one configuration to another or from one setup to another. It stands for single minute exchange of die. And basically, it's the history of it is that Mr. Shingo, again, he visited multiple die fabrication facilities, and he found that they take maybe sometimes 3-4 days to really take a die out and put a new die in and change it from one model to another. He said, can we do this in single minutes? So maximum 9 minutes. Can we do that? And there's a very simple methodology to do that. We tried this a lot, very popular in manufacturing and in healthcare. For example, in the operation room, this is the most expensive resource in the hospital. And to switch this operation room from a new surgery, for example, to a labor, child labor, for example, surgery, a C-section or whatever, it usually takes sometimes 2 hours, 1 hour and a half. And in a very limited time of the day, you need to use the operation room multiple times. So we do this a lot with that, for example. And there's the line balancing. This is a typical, very simple tool, a lot of data gathering, a lot of industrial engineering in it. How can you put a time to every work element and redistribute the work elements in a way that every station will do almost the same amount of work, not the same type of work, but the same amount of work. And thus things will be flowing easily. There's no bottlenecks as much as possible. This is through the line balancing approach. And there's also the lean accounting, which is very, very important for you guys if you are into process improvement. And at this early stage, how can you set your accounting models in a way that it doesn't just go to the typical costing approach, but incorporate the impact of process improvement? It's also a very nice topic to speak about. All these are hours of basically training, or you can read it definitely. As I said, lead is almost intuitive and can easily be picked by you. Let's take a break before we speak about the culture. So again, it's exactly on the hour. Let's get back 5-2. Right? People are different in using these things. There are underpinning culture issues or facts. So here's what I do with my customers usually, and I ask them. I give you the answer here, but you shouldn't see the answer. But basically, when something, a couple of questions to really set or test the water on what kind of environment are we working in. So when something goes right, do you or your manager, any of these, raise the bar for the next month numbers? So basically you manage to exceed the quota of 80 parts per month into 90. What will happen? Let's keep that 90. Or would they reward the team and discover the cause and institutionalize the change? If you answer this, if your answer is basically in this kind of direction, then this is a typical mass production going after numbers. This is what Deming said, don't do that. But because next time I will not excel in my work again. So every time you punish me, right? Every time you do better, you just keep telling me, keep doing that thing without asking how did this happen and how can I make sure that I help you to keep doing that. A culture of just abusing and exploiting whatever I can have in terms of numbers versus an empowering culture and asking basically what led to this and how can I help you to do that? Because next time when you see that you're rewarded because you did good and basically I'm helping you to keep doing like that, I will keep doing this more and more. And this is why, for example, it's very clear. And industrial engineers say, did you do any sort of internal audits or the time motion study, for example? What happens when you put your stopwatch and the workers see doing that?
Sometimes they will actually speed up just because you have to stop watching.
Yeah, or sometimes they slow down because you know that you're going to measure the capacity. So the workers assemble like that. Once you pull your stopwatch out, it's not to go slower and slower because you know that basically that if you're timing them, you're going to put a standard based on their speed. Let me be slow so that the standard will be less and I can actually live my life. Right? This is what we are speaking about. Do you or your manager believe that employees are all replaceable? Right? This is part of the mass production mentality. And there's an ethical issue with, for example, the concept of labor hour rather than labor skill. You're just a commodity with an hour output. I can plug you in and out and get replaced. But this is the mentality that we have here as mass production management versus actually you are the most important, basically, asset that we have. And again, at this early stage of your startup, make sure that this is the culture that you are nurturing. Right? Not everybody is replaceable, and every single individual in this team is a very important asset, right? So you can make a difference, right? This is extremely important. This is a very interesting one, okay? When you plan a project and the project is failing, do you or your manager cancel the project and cut your losses? Let's just dump it and move on, or encourage employees to learn from what happened and actually try again. Mistakes and problems are good news or bad news? Let me put it this way. In a lean culture, they are good news, not because you are happy with the mistakes, but they are a learning opportunity. There's something that definitely you can learn. We can revisit our standards and revisit our training, right? We can experiment around it, we can Kaizen around it, we can actually excel and improve. Right? Again, back to this movie case study. I can share it also with you, basically with the book. One of the things that American manager was saying, when we were actually checked on by the headquarters from Japan, what's going on, we usually tell them things are going up to plan and up to we're doing well, everything is good, because this is how we were trained. Always let the boss hear what he or she would like to hear, right? And no news are good news. So they let it go one time, two times, the third time they snapped back and said, well, there's something wrong. Don't tell me everything is okay, because it's either you can't see what's happening or you are lying. There's nothing always good, right? It's not that they're looking for problems, but there are always opportunities to basically improve. Ono, for example, that Japanese total production system founder, in a sense, has a very famous hiring procedure called the Ono circle. If an engineer applies for a position at Toyota, he brings him or her and draw a big circle on the floor and actually stick that candidate in that circle and ask him or her to basically watch and observe around for maybe 1 hour with a piece of paper and a pen. And he comes after that 1 hour and ask him or her, what did you guys see? If you don't capture an opportunity for improvement during that 1 hour, I don't want to hire it. I need that critical eye, that eye that can actually see an opportunity in every single thing. So are you willing to explore and experiment and endorse people, or you cut your losses and play it safe? Okay, when an employee has a suggestion, you or your manager basically response is to ignore it, or even sometimes steal it, or great, let's give it a try. Again, ideas, innovation. Yeah, this is a very interesting. This is a very interesting data, and this is, by the way, an old data. I don't know whether it improved or not, but it's at least 5 years old. Toyota provides training tools and boundaries. They solicit and implement almost 95% of their employees' ideas. Toyota employees the average employee will give around 75 ideas per year, right? So imagine, so per week, 1 idea and a half almost for every single worker. A typical American employee in this mass production machine being plugged just as a gear in it will have only 1 every other year. So 1.5 every week versus 1 every year. Tells you how much this environment is an empowering environment versus this just do what you're told you're a machine. Charlie Chaplin, very famous movie of mass production, right? Just do like that. Anyway, I have some ethical issues with mass production. After being there for a long time, that's not the best way. Anyways. So if you're coming from the mass production mentality, right? If you are, and this is maybe not that relevant for you guys, because this is when if you are trying to migrate from a traditional management to a lean management, it's for these traditional folks, but I'm sharing this because you're gonna bump into some of these traditional folks. Right? This is Alice in Wonderland. This is basically things that their minds are not wired in that direction. Waste is the enemy, not the competitors. This is how lean thinkers are. We don't care about the competitors. We care about what internally we can do. Our waste is our main target, not basically our competitors to outpace them. Job security doesn't come from hiding things to yourself and keeping them to yourself. Actually, job security is in sharing, which is totally contradictory to what most of the people traditionally would think. Right? Go ahead, capture through the A3. Tell us what you do. And the more you share, the more you're actually valuable to us. The better people around you, the more money you will earn. It's a team thing, right? It's not basically a cutthroat race, unfortunately. You know, definitely can relate to some of that, right? That is the point, right? That kind of is. do or make things when they are needed, not before that, so you can really go faster than the demand. Your job is to think, not just to do what you're told. It's extremely important. Slow things to go faster. Again, all what's against the mass production mentality is something that's very challenging when you try to implement lean culture. This is a very famous picture that you'll find in every single Toyota facility. What does this tell you? It tells you that if you are a sailor of that boat, you have and you would like to sail smoothly, you have two options. You can increase the water level and you sail smoothly without bumping into any of these rocks, but you didn't change the reality. The rocks are still there. For whatever reason, that level of water will go down, you will actually bump into some of these rocks. But the better way is to understand the reality of the problems and try to eliminate these rocks as much as possible. The water level is the extra production and the extra inventory. Overproduction and inventory. Overproduction and inventory can conceal and cover problems. Right? So you can elusively think you're doing well because you have a lot of products in your warehouse, but the reality is you actually have a lot of problems. So produce what's needed when needed or needed and have really what you need and realize the problems and face them. It's a very kind of philosophical, but this is a very famous picture in every Toyota facility. Smokey the Bear, right? And again, I'm firefighting. So part of the culture mentality that you can breed in your facility or in your startup is if you keep rewarding the firefighters, everybody would like to be a firefighter. If this is how you set heroes, basically, that they are set, so you will be always in the firefighting mood. But you don't smoke the bear. Basically, be proactive and stop the fire from the camp, right? If you keep rewarding the Smokey the Bears, everybody will be on that proactive manner. You are more happy with people who actually proactively stop problems or actually develop something that's new. I have to have some firefighters, but this shouldn't be the culture and the work ethics that we have. Unfortunately, we are always in that firefighting mode. And we keep rewarding people who solve the problem and made our day. So everybody got to be that here. What you reward for, what you actually praise is what you're going to get. Very important when you do out of these improvements, you will get to realize that maybe you can reduce the number of workers. If you fire one worker because you did some post improvement, this will be your last post improvement in the facility. No more. Nobody will help you after that because post improvement for them mean people are out of job. But if you do a post improvement and you get less workers, what will you do with the excess people? Engage them in another post improvement. Right? Get them to pick up another product or another project or another basically initiative. The moment you fire people because of a lean project, this will be your last lean project in that facility. And this is an advice, definitely make use of the skills, not by firing them, but by re-engaging. Okay, this is a good also advice for you, whether you would like to know whether you're doing a good job in your lean management or not. Look to your daily diet. How much time are you spending doing something that's very new? How much time you are trying to improve an existing process? How much time you're spending keeping something going just status quo? And how much time you are firefighting? The answer for these questions will tell you how your actually company and your processes actually go. If you are in this zone, look 80% of the time, pity on you. If you're here, wow, very innovative, you're always exploring new adventures. Here and there are okay zones to be bouncing between them. Questions about lean culture? Move a little bit fast so that I can get you to Six Sigma. Questions, comments? You guys hear about that? Anybody would like to share a culture dilemma or shock that you went through, or you saw, or you heard of?
What's that line again? You get more of what you reward. What is that?
So basically, what you reward for is what you get. So if you reward firefighters, you get firefighters. If you reward Smokey the Bear, you get Smokey the Bear. Clear? Questions, comments? Maddie, any questions and comments? You're part of that. No? Okay, then maybe in 10-15 minutes and then we'll open a discussion. Let me take you into the world of Six Sigma. So that you understand a little bit about what's lean in general as a concept, as principle, principles, tools, and culture, and all these things. Six Sigma is kind of an old new paradigm of trying to fix a very, very, very clear problem. If you don't mind, I like how you guys are still classical with the piece of paper pen. I'd like each one of you to sign their signature 10 times in a row. Everyone, if you can, at least we will have a piece of paper.
Oh, we have some
Yeah, there you go.
notepads
See?
over there.
Excellent. Just your signature 10 times in a row. And if you're online, do that, please. Sign the signature 10 times in a row. Very small signature. Don't trick me.
It's
Okay.
smaller,
Yeah,
smaller.
small. Okay, I'd like you to look into your signature now and really, really thoroughly tell me if you see 200% identical signatures. 100%, not 99. 99.9. Look at these 10 signatures. Are they exactly identical? So, no. Let me ask you these questions. Who in the world is more expert in this specific signature other than you? You're the world expert. Literally, you're the world expert. It's your signature. How much training did you have for that signature? How many years you have been doing that? How complicated that process is? It's only 10 times. It's only a signature. And yet, you can see the variability and the variation. Right? Now, let's imagine if you're actually doing 100,000 processes like that, 10,000 processes like that, with far less training, with a lot of, which is much more complicated processes, and imagine the amount of variability and the variation that will happen in this process. So Six Sigma is coming for that. Six Sigma is all about realizing and understanding that the number one enemy in the lean thinking, number one enemy is waste. The Six Sigma number one enemy is variation and variability. How can we make sure as much as possible we can minimize that variability, and we know that we can't eliminate it because this is the fact. This is the fact. You can't eliminate variability. It is inherent in every single process. Every single process that's evolving over time will have some kind of variability and variation. That variability and variation can be an outcome of one of two reasons, generally two reasons, right, or categories. One is what we call the special cause of variation, and this is something that's actually coming outside the process. And this is, as much as it's hurtful, but it is a good category to deal with. Because I can capture that and I can eliminate it. If this variation is because of a bad material or a bad part, I can take it out. If this is because of a bad worker or an unskilled worker, I can actually improve that problem. But the problem is what we call the common cause variability, which is part of the inherent process itself. The wear and tear, for example, of materials, can't really stop that. The external ambient pressure, for example, or temperature, right? The customer dynamics and variability. You can't really deal with these things as easy as a very clear special cause. But bottom line is, there are always reasons for that variability, and Six Sigma will try to do the following. Number one, capture that variability. We'll tell you what's the variability level. Two, give you a lot of statistical tools to understand why this is happening. And when you understand this, why this is happening quantitatively, you can intervene and solve the problem. This is the story of Six Sigma. Why is it called Six Sigma? I'll tell you now. I think we spoke about that. Six Sigma is part of migrating from the classical quality view with what we call the goalpost view into the continuous improvement view. Any soccer fans here? So you guys are not basketball fans, I saw that. Soccer fan? Come on. I'm a very, very hardcore soccer fan. Of course, coming from Egypt originally, we eat and drink soccer. So, anyways, so if you are a soccer fan, you know that if you have a goal, right? If you shoot the ball at any location, that goal, if it gets here or gets here or gets here, it will count as a goal, right? You score one goal, right? Doesn't matter, right? So this is why the classical definition of quality was the goalpost. If I have an upper limit and a lower limit of specs, as long as I'm within the specs, I'm good, right? It doesn't matter. Even if I get all my production here, right? Very close to that limit, I'm okay with that. Well, with the understanding and analyzation of how hurtful variation and variability is, the new quality definition is any deviation from the exact target, from the exact middle point of the target, right? Any deviation from here or here, even if it's within the specs, I need to acknowledge it as kind of a negative output. I'll not say a defect, right? It's not a defect yet, but there is something wrong with that. So this is the goalpost. Anything here is good. If I hit outside that goalpost, I'm bad. But basically, the continued, and this is basically just an example. While the Lean Six Sigma new quality definition is any deviation from that exact target is something that I actually need to attend to. And this is where the voice of process comes to the picture, and this is where Six Sigma basically comes to the picture. So Six Sigma is so Sigma is a letter from the Greek alphabet that statisticians used to use to capture the variability and the variation around an average, around the mean. Right? We hear about the mu and sigma, right? And here's the thing. The sigma, to put it in a very simple way, sigma is basically, in this kind of statistical analysis, is how far you are off from the target. So if you go 1 sigma off, you go this way. This is the target. If you go 2 sigmas, this is the target. 3 sigmas, 4 sigmas. So sigma is the step that you take away from that target. Right? So Six Sigma is a statistical approach that will tell you through multiple tools how can you minimize the variation so that even if you go 1 sigma, 2 sigma, 3 sigma, 4 sigma, 5 sigma, 6 sigma, as you keep going away and away and away and away and away, that even if you go away from that target, you're still in the basically specific tolerance. And this is why this is a better process than this. Why? Because this process has a very high sigma. So 1 sigma, 2 sigma of this process will get you out of the tolerance. While this basically 1 sigma, 2 sigma, 3 sigma, 4 sigma will actually get all this very small tail still within that. And why are we doing this? Because we know that processes, due to multiple reasons, new material, wear and tear, will tend to shift. So I'd like to minimize the variation in a way that even if it starts to shift over time, I have enough tolerance and I have enough basically buffer that in order to really get out of that tolerance with these shifts, it requires a lot of production. So specifically, statistically speaking, Six Sigma with every billion products out, have only 3.4 that. So, because this basically is a very slim. It's as if you are putting the process variability on diet. So instead of having very dispersed that process variability, you're trying to really make it very narrow, right? And it's a very, very minimal. Still there's variability. Still there's a variation. It's very minimal. That even the process start to shift like that because of that variability, I'm still within the specs. Am I making any sense?
Yes.
So this is how you look at it. So see, this is 1 sigma, 2 sigma, 3 sigma, right? And after that, you're out. I would like to go all the way to 6 sigma basically to stay in the space. I know this is too much at the end. Here are some numbers. Okay. So this is supposed to be up here.
Oh no.
Oh yeah. Anyway, so this is basically kind of the world-class classification of manufacturing relative to the sigmas. Less than 3 sigma, you're out of competition. You're no competitor. From 3 sigma to 4 sigmas, this is kind of the average world-class manufacturing. 5 and 6 sigma, this is where basically you get into very high quality industries, right? And again, to really put it in a better way, the animation is totally off, but it's okay. So 6 sigma basically is the sweetest food that you can have for your manufacturing. 1 and 2 sigma, these are the basically bad foods on the ground. And the low-hanging fruit is the 3 sigma, which is usually what everybody else is in now. No, this is very bad English. This is y equal function x here. Man, come on. This is not the slides I sent. I don't know.
PowerPoint and Google Slides don't like to talk.
Yeah. Anyway, so what is Six Sigma? So this is Six Sigma from a mathematical perspective. Really, practically speaking, you don't do all these things. Six Sigma basically is the way you look into every process as y function of x. Forget about the slides. So you guys, if you're online, y function of x, meaning I have an output that's dependent. So for example, this is the luminance of the painting process of my colors. And I'd like to check the quality. I'd like to make sure that it's specifically at a certain level. I would ask myself, what are the parameters, what are the x's that will lead to this y? So for example, the nozzle direction of the paint, the pressure of the nozzle, x1, x2, x3, for example, the quality of the paint itself, the electrostatic level of the body. All these are different x's that actually work together to generate that. When you go through a very thorough design experiment process to make multiple tests on the impact of every parameter on that y and how these parameters interact with one another, so that you end up with a real model. So you take this function out and you put a mathematical model for every single x in its range that will generate that y. This is the y equal function x mentality. So basically, this is what you do. You know that there is a dependent variable that you're looking for example, leakage, for example, in your product, right? What will contribute to this leakage? X1, X2, X3, X4, right? And then you start to do some experimentation in a very well-structured design of experiment way to see how every X really play an impact with Y and how they are relating to one another. This Y equal function X mentality is a mindset of Six Sigma. Six Sigma.
This is real similar to electronics and machining parts. The wider the tolerance, the more it's pretty much the same.
Well, yes, very similar to that. Yes.
Why would a company spend a lot of money to get from 5 to 6 Sigma if, I mean, per millions of units, you're only really getting a change of product?
Depends on the industry. If you're in the aerospace industry, you have zero tolerance. Or if you are basically in a very critical industry, yes.
So, for example, like the aerospace, are they 6 Sigma or are they 7
GE,
Sigma?
for example, the inventor of Six Sigma in their aerospace line of production, they are Six Sigma.
Wow.
Honeywell, Six Sigma, and some of the products. And again, it's that journey toward this perfection gets you to combat a lot of these variability and variation. So maybe you don't go there, but definitely you will improve a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is your target. You do this whole idea, this combating variability through this DMake cycle. It's like the PDCA in the lean. This is basically the structured methodology of implementing Six Sigma. You define the problem, you measure the current Y, right? You look into the X's that affect this Y. You play with the X's to improve. Once you get to the level where the variability is minimized and you are at the Six Sigma, you control it, you lock it there, and this is the new reality, and you move forward again. So if in the lean PDCA cycle, toward eliminating waste, in the Six Sigma, they make cycle towards eliminating variability.
Prime example in the aerospace industry, when the space shuttle blew up. They had done Six Sigma the first time, and that seal could have withstood a wider range of temperatures. And the second one, after they fixed it, it was Six Sigma.
Yeah.
So even that industry makes a difference.
Yes. On time.